We have a wonderful panorama of dolls that span, well over 100 years of doll making. Standing in front of the black-robed silk dress of a flapper lady are a collection of dolls from the very fine contemporary doll maker, Anki Dongen, who has this really magical way of looking at children and fantasy, and that's a wonderful collection that came to us from one private collector. And then standing next to them, we have, for example, two automatons. We have the girl with the basket of flowers, in which when she's wound, music plays, and she lifts the basket, the lid of the basket she's holding. Actually, it's always magical because she's really not holding it. It's protruding in from a metal rod into her torso, which is very unromantic to say, but is how the mechanical worker devised this scene to make something appear magical. And she lifts the lid and out pops a little bird and twits around back and forth singing. Earlier than that, Falbois made wonderful automatons in which he very often utilized monkey figures. And of course, what he was doing was mocking the French aristocracy in his own little, kind of little prodding a little stick at them to say how foolish they sometimes were. But here's a lovely couple, an aristocratic monkey couple, sitting in their salon, and they are enjoying an evening time there. They are accompanied by a bevy of French bébés and French poupées, which are from the works of Émile Gibault, from Janelle AC, and they're quite lovely in different models in different time periods. And then seated in the case, we can skip fashion times and pop up into the late teens, early 20s, with our German flapper ladies that are lounging in their long slender flapper bodies and a whole different style of dressing and a different type of wear. It's a wonderful arrangement of the kind of times that dolls can represent to collectors today as they look over different historical events. It's a great collection of items. Moving from the glamour of the French fashion, of the French bébé and fashion world, to a table and an arrangement of dolls with a festivity and gaiety and fun and childlike. And we're going to start with our back cabinet. Now, back in here we have googlies, from a large Just Me, one of the largest I've seen, to the wonderful Uncle Sam googly with his molded bisque hat, to the ever popular 221 in a darling little petite size. But this is the great rarity. Made by Alban Hess, this is a googly, and you might be asking, why is that hat up so high on his head? Because he is a light, he is a lamp, and this is a lampshade. Coming out of the top of his head is a fixture in which a light bulb is placed, and the shade was put over it. The wiring went down through his body, out through his foot, and as you can see, there is a plug here, and he was designed as a nightlight. Jürgen and Marianne Cieslik wrote about him in their magazine in the 1990s and later published in the book German Doll Studies, and they wrote about how they had found this in the home of an original owner, not a doll collector, but an original owner of artifacts, and her parents had bought it for her in the 19-teens. And she had used it all her life as a nightlight in her bedroom. So the little googly lamp, extremely rare, and that is the original hat / lampshade on his head. This is the only one I've ever seen. This is the one that was in their book. We sold it years ago, and it's come back to us in a collection now, so I don't even know if any others even exist. Extremely rare doll. On the table, we have a wonderful assortment of pieces, and they're all centered around this goat cart. It's a Sicilian goat cart, and it's something you really have to keep studying and looking at to see over and over again, because when I was going to catalog it, I started writing something, and then I'd say, well, wait a minute, what about that? Oh, wait a minute, what about that? There's a face that's carved, that's painted on the floor of the cart. There are carved faces all over, carved heads all over the cart, and each of the places you'll see them. Here, in the back. Every panel has painting on it that symbolize some historical scene. And these were very large size, real goat size carts were made during the various Sicilian festivals and paraded around the towns during that time. And then this was a miniature one that was made, and I think very, very few are ever known to exist, and it has all of its original painting. And what a great centerpiece for any kind of a doll display. Well, who should be sitting here at the bottom of them with this polar bear looking like he's coming at him is a very rare Leo Moss baby with the actual tears still on his face. A very, very wonderful example of the Leo Moss child. And wonderful new research is coming out on that. So this is a good time to be having one. We have a Kathy Cruz early period, and we have a Kathy Cruz later period with her original tag on her. There is a whole collection of Schoenhut animals, all of them glass-eyed, all of them being sold as one circus. So great opportunity there for people. The Lenchi Spanish lady, and then another wonderful Lenchi lady, all in their original costumes. So these are great. And Steiff, Native American. When Cieslicks wrote their book, Button and Ear, about the Steiff firm, they talked about the fact that Steiff had presented an entire line, you never see these anywhere, an entire line of their dolls representing various Native Americans in various costumes representing different tribes. Well, here's just one. Where are the others? Somebody needs to find them. They're extremely rare. Wonderful Schoenhut children, and this is just a great collection of miscellaneous, colorful, wonderful toys from our childhood past. We have another wonderful collection of playthings from various eras, various companies, various countries of maker. The Germans are well represented here, ranging from the early closed-mouth Kessner child with her very, very wistful look, and then two of the German dolls in their original folklore costumes, which are wonderful to find. Little multi-head Kessner series. I always wonder when some dolls, I always think could be in a category called what were they thinking, the manufacturers. And I'm wondering, the dolls with changeable heads always seem to me a curious thing to give to a child. I don't know, it's just a little bizarre. Actually, someone was talking to me this week about the very rare Bébé Gourmand de Bru. And I don't know if you know, but the Bébé Gourmand is supposed to show a doll that digests its food. So it has a bottle or a biscuit that you put in its mouth, and then the doll digests the food. But where does the food come out? Through a hole in the foot. And that falls to me in the category of what were they thinking? How confusing could this possibly be to a child? Well, the doll was not very successful, which is of course why it's extremely rare today and is a very beautiful doll, but just really not child play. I digress. That's okay. We also have up here, we have a wonderful sample box, and I can show it to you by moving this a little, of Santa Claus figures and polar bears and snow babies from the Hertwig Company, and this is how they would take their various pieces to toy fairs and show them to prospective buyers, to show them the pieces that they would have available for them to buy for their stores to present for Christmas. A wonderful little miniature feather tree, a nice early one with early ornaments on it. Some all bisque bilo babies, very, very desirable right there in various sizes, and made with a variety of, two of them with glass eyes and painted hair, and one with the wig and glass eyes. We have the Santa Clauses, the larger one hiding in the back being a candy container. Separates at the center, and the midriff was actually a candy box. Beautiful jumeaus, including one in an original box. This is her box that the little kids are hiding in right here. And then another one in her original chemise, and of course another wonderful googly with the sculpted hair. You can see the relationship to Grace Story Putnam here. I'm sorry, Grace Drayton here, with their sculpted bobbed hair in that particular orange color. We have the very, very rare Simon and Halbig 153 boy. Simon and Halbig characters, there were only 3 made in their series. They're extremely rare, and I don't understand why collectors don't realize how actually rare these dolls are. To me, the boy in particular is an absolute work of art. It really is. And in the back, you see the dancing pair. They're in their original box. The box has a label on it called the Cakewalk. And they are, who is the maker of these? It will surprise you, Schoenhut. The Schoenhut firm presented these. This is from the same series as the Santa Claus in the purple suit that I showed you earlier in this go-around. Wonderful and very, very rare pieces, surprisingly found in the Australian collections. Who would believe? I know many of you always look anxiously for any sign of the Gemot 200 series characters, which are so very rare to find. And here we have an outstanding example of one in her original Gemot costume from the Gemot factory, which is extraordinarily rare to find, and that wonderful expression on her face. I thought it was appropriate that we posed her with two other crying children. I guess it was popular to make crying children for a while, although you'll find, I looked up for someone in 1899 when the Gemot factory merged with SFBJ. There was an inventory done in the Gemot factory, and at that point 35 examples of this doll existed in the Gemot factory, telling you what an extraordinarily rare doll it was, since it only had come out a few years prior to that. Here we have a later version of a crying child, and this is the SFBJ crying child. Okay, kind of utilizing the same model but varying it, and with the sculpted hair. Very, very good. And then Gebruder Heubach, not to be outdone, decided that he better make a crying child, and he did with his intaglio eyes, not with glass eyes, but the intaglio-eyed crying child by Gebruder Heubach. I think somebody should have all three of them so you really can show how the same process was utilized. We have a lovely little French bébé right here, and then we have two other examples of the beloved Steiner bébé. And I ask you, is there any French doll maker you think that makes a sweeter doll than Steiner? I don't think so. Their dolls are invariably have the most pensive, gentle, charming faces, and particularly when they come in these smaller sizes, that is so, so rare and so desirable to find. Next to them, and I want to see if maybe you can see her face. I hope the camera can catch this in the mirror, catch this mirror, her second face, because she's sleeping here. But if you turned her around and you pivoted her face, look, we have a beautiful, classic, smiling French poupée. This is Bru's double-faced Gemot. Very, very rare to find. A very beautiful example of it. Should be desirable to anyone to want to have in their collection. I think we've only had the double-faced poupée come to us 4 or 5 times in all of our years of doing doll auctions, so it's very difficult to find. A beautiful gliding waltzing lady over and above. I'm going to lift it so you can see how simple she was made underneath. Very simple, but then elegant and beautifully costumed on top with the original gown to accommodate her movement, which would be to move forward and then slowly turn around and glide forward. Very, very beautiful automaton, but in my mind, you don't need her as an automaton. You just put her in the middle of an arrangement of French fashion dolls, and she speaks for herself. We have here a 3-faced doll. We have a gorgeous little early Bebe Schmidt, and we have a Gemot in her entirely original costume, posed at the back of the room, seated, the beloved AT, the early kid-bodied variation, which is the earliest model of her to be found, and we have her posed in that cabinet. She's really extraordinarily beautiful. I hope you're all able to come to see so you can actually come and see these up close and in person. Moving along our table, we have a lovely made for the French market, and Simon & Halbig, but definitely made for the French market in her original Normandy costume, very, very beautiful, of a nanny. And in the case behind her, the little kid-bodied FG. Again, the kid bodies of the FG and the AT are earliest versions of their bébés, and they're very hard to find, and they always have the just extraordinary faces. Look at the eyes on that doll, so wonderful. And the little tiny size Bebe Steiner next to her. Then moving along, we have, oh yes, how about him? KPM porcelain head gentleman, very rare to find. We have the Jumeau Cherished, and we have another Jumeau in her original costume. I know I keep saying that, but they are here. Standing next to the mechanical kitten from Roulet and Decamp, you wind her up and that arm goes up and down, and she's the snobbery aristocrat lady looking at everyone in the crowd. An original dress from Jumeau or Bru, absolutely wonderful. I wish, the only thing wrong with it, it doesn't have the original matching bonnet. But what a great costume to have, and it's very, very different. And more, someone said to me, oh, I wish I had a doll to wear it. And I said, get the costume. The dolls are easier to find than these costumes. They are getting impossible to find. We have beautiful Steiners again in different models. We have this wonderful little Jumeau that has her original label from the 1900 International Exposition. So you know that she was an award winner at that exposition. And moving along, we have another little Jumeau. We have a little Simon and Halbig all bisque mignonette, and a Jumeau with her original Marat, her party Marat of paper mache in the original costume. I wanted you to notice this doll in particular, because please note that she even has like the leather kid gloves. I believe that costume, although it does not have an original label, to me is very, very indicative of the costumes from the Margane Lacroix exhibition that was held in 1916. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute when I get to another doll here. But at that exhibition where they showed the Mark doll, the Albert Mark doll in historic costumes, that was also abetted by a number of SFVJ dolls that were in historic costumes as well. And this is very similar to ones that I have found that have had original labels in them. So I believe it to be from that, although I can't verify it without the tag on it. So we have this wonderful table with dolls that range from about 1750 to 1880. So a wonderful collection of early antique dolls. And in the top of the table, inside her little steepled case, is a wonderful early English wooden doll. And the costume on this doll is extraordinary. I don't know if you can tell that the bonnet she's holding under her arm, her little flat top bonnet, is kind of disguising part of the skirt, which has that wonderful tiered layers of the scalloped edge panel with the appliqued flowers attached to the gown. She has her original painting and wonderful early English wooden doll. Earlier than that, standing on the level below her, is the tiniest little wooden doll. She is from about 1750, and excuse me if you have the catalog, I accidentally said 1850 in the catalog. This is 1750. And what I hope you will look at the catalog and you will be able to see the way her hair is arranged. It's like little tiniest of little ringlet curls that are arranged in little puffs like on the top of her head. She comes with an original costume and a second original costume that you can see standing next to her. And she also comes in this wonderful fabric covered case, dome top wooden case, which is really quite nice. Down below her, over on the other side, is the model of Jumeau known as the Jumeau Cherished, and I'm just going to cross over to her very quickly because I do want you to pay particular attention to her costume, which is totally original. It is another one from the Jumeau, Ernestine Jumeau workshops. And again, I feel so fortunate to have these original costumes for you to be hoping to acquire for your collection, because it was so important to the doll makers at the time to make these costumes and to have what they think really completed the doll. And to be able to find them today, to have withstood the The aging process is remarkable. This is an outstanding example of one, and she's just an absolute beauty. Standing here in front of her is another brew. I think this is the tiniest size we have today. Well, she is too, but I mean of the classic brew, June face, the golden age of brew. And again, with the face, as people call it, with a little tiny tongue tip, beautiful hands, with her original chemise next to her that has the Bebe Brew label on the front of it. A very, very fine example of the brew. And we have the little Brevet brew, which is the first model of brew, which is over here looking on her enviously because she said, why don't I have a dome? But she is in a beautiful original costume and a very lovely. I think people who want to acquire a brew, they always look for this model. I think opportunity awaits you in buying that earlier Bebe Brevet face, which to me is really extraordinary. And you can acquire that at a considerably less price, and it's just a fabulous, fabulous doll. The H doll, the Halapo doll, the dream of doll collectors. So few were made. Halapo he originally was a cafe owner. He married his wife. She worked in ornamental feather making. And the two of them acquired a doll firm and went on to make dolls. But I think it was never terribly successful. Could have been because the quality of their dolls was so expensive and so fine, or it could have simply been at the time that they came into the market, there was so much competition from other people, but they never really took off, and the firm eventually went bankrupt. Halapo, Aristide Halapo, you find very, very few dolls by that company. One of the things that helps indicate the value of this doll or the prestige of it, it has the original label from Au Paradis des Enfants on the torso. That's the shop in which it was sold, the Paris shop. Now, I talked to you before about Au Nom Bleu, and Au Nom Bleu and Au Paradis des Enfants really existed, not physically side by side, but chronologically side by side for, well, not a century, but certainly half a century or more. And they were the prestige shops. So one of the things that's most interesting, again, Francois Timer did a book on Au Nom Bleu store, and there's never been anything done on Au Paradis des Enfants, although why there could be is this company, not only did the big department stores publish their annual holiday trends catalog, but so did Au Paradis des Enfants. There's a whole series of catalogs showing all of the items that they would offer each year. They at one time actually did a little tiny miniature booklet that they would give to children showing dolls that were available in their shop. Someone could do a book on Au Paradis des Enfants, and heading the book on the cover, they could put the Halapo doll, which could be about as primo as you could get. A very, very rare and beautiful doll. We have the dolls sticking with the British royalty, with the wooden ones we had. We do have the coronet set from Liberty of London. That was the coronation of Elizabeth's father, and Elizabeth and her younger sister at his time in the 1930s. We have a 5 pair of signed French shoes, a lovely chameau. And let me just skip over here to show you a couple other things very, very quickly. An extremely rare model of chameau, which is the EJA. EJA. A believed meaning it was the initial offering of the EJ model of dolls bearing his signature, Emile Jameau. He finally decided, I better sign my dolls. People are copying them. A being the premier model of them. Very rare and hard to find with a very distinctive long jowly look, and that's a gorgeous example. A beautiful FG, again with kid body and bisque hands, and this chameau. Everybody loves it, that very early period smiling chameau. She has a mint body, which is really wonderful. And I love this pair when they come in. If you love dollhouse dolls, but look what's so different about them. Those are sculpted bisque headpieces. The turbans or the headscarves on both the gentleman and the lady are part of the sculpting of their heads. Extremely, extremely rare. And then 2 examples from the lovely group of fashions which grace the auction in their wonderful costumes.